welcome back to the Believe in Bucs podcast. My name is Jonathan Shields, and as you guys can see, or if you're hearing, this is a very special episode. We are joined by Buccaneer legend Lavonte David. Lavonte, how are you doing?
What's up, man? How you doing? I'm doing great. I can't complain at all, man.
I'm
Appreciate you for
doing
having me.
great. I appreciate you coming on. So, obviously, this is the first training camp you've had off in probably forever.
Yeah.
Is it weird that not playing football right now, or are you liking it? How's your body feel? Just how does it feel your first official training camp off from
Oh
football?
man. I mean, a lot of thoughts went through my mind, leading up to, the start of training camp. I just seen guys training, I seen guys going hard, getting ready for training camp. And during that time, all I could think of, man, like how would I react, once it's time to report and everything, I have everything. I still have, connections at the Bucs
Hmm.
obviously. And I know when they reported, I know what times practice and stuff like
Yeah,
that. And for me, man, it when they reported, I didn't feel no different. I didn't feel no way. And that's the main thing for me. I just wanted to see how I feel once everything gets to going there, seeing all the guys going back reporting today, respected camps and stuff like that. And then, not too long ago, I went out there to visit, watch a training camp
yeah,
practice. Obviously, I caught chills, just because of the excitement of football. But mentally, I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm definitely not playing this no more. Just
yeah.
watching, those guys grind and work. So, I did kind of got a peace of mind when I went out there to actually, watch and see like how it would be. So, that just makes my retirement announcement that much sweeter because I know I made the right decision for myself.
Yeah, that's perfect. So we're going to start at the beginning from your college journey.
Mhm.
And obviously you started out at a JuCo. You went to Fort Scott Community College.
Yeah.
You had a monster few years there. What was that process like? Because I feel like a lot of people when they hear JuCo football, they think of Last Chance U, and
Yeah.
they kind of think of that kind of way. What was that experience like for you before you eventually got to Nebraska?
Man, I think what I went through in JUCO kind of molded me and prepared me for everything I went through throughout the league up to this point. The mental toughness part, the battling through whatever, just the camaraderie with the guys, the friends that I made throughout that process, and going to JUCO, man, it's tough. What I went through, it was rough. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't recommend nobody to go through it, but at the same time, man, I don't regret it. I wouldn't take it back for nothing. I admire the fact that I went through that process for myself because it helped me. It made mold me to who I am, as a person, as a football player. Um, man, just I signed the Middle Tennessee State coming out of high school. Thought I was able to get a chance to go there, but that fell through. And another opportunity came up, which is going into Fort Scott Community College. Eddie Brown reached out to my family. Thought it'd be a great situation for me, and I ended up going there. Um, as soon as I got there, man, it was basically time for camp. So I missed, all of stuff prior, the early conditioning stages and stuff like that. So I missed that. I wasn't in shape. Was in terrible shape. Kind of got chewed out a lot. Didn't pass the conditioning test. So the only thing left for me is just perform on the football field. So and that's what I did. Soon when we put on pads, I just went out there and performed the best way that I can. I made myself created myself a spot on the roster, which is crazy because at that time I think the rules has changed, but at that time it was only a lot. They only allowed 12 out of state players to make the roster, and they
Mhm.
bring in like 50 guys,
Yeah,
from all over. Guys who may have been former 5 stars, guys who got kicked out of their colleges coming in, stuff like that. And for me to be able to, climb, beat out all those guys, but after returning, late, it shows that coming late, it shows that I was a man on a mission. And that's
hmm
what my whole mindset was when I was there. I was just on a mission. I was ready to grind, get it in and get out, man. I was able to do that. But, you know, everybody have different stories, man. Everybody got different journeys. JUCO, it ain't as, it may not be as bad. You just gotta have a different mindset when you go in there, man. Don't go in there with no high expectations. Don't go in there thinking you're gonna get treated like these other schools and stuff like that. But when you're in JUCO, man, it's a dog eat dog world. But I think they made it easier now. A lot of out of state guys are on the roster, and
hmm
a new college rule came up, those guys get all their years back.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's definitely, great. I only had 2 years left remaining, but now when you come out of JuCo, you get all 4 years. So that's pretty
Yep.
good.
Yeah, I know for sure. And then, so you went from there, obviously, to Nebraska.
Hmm.
Why did you choose Nebraska? And then, what were your years like there?
Yes, man. I chose Nebraska because I kind of, fell in love with just being away from home, being away, being able to lock in and focus on, what I'm focused on. I remember my parents at the time kind of, pitched that, going to Nebraska, how historic the program was. Obviously, I had no clue about Nebraska,
Yeah.
me being from South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is Florida, Florida State, Miami,
Yep.
and then all the other big name schools, whatever. But I didn't know much about Nebraska. Last time I, seen Nebraska was when they played UM in the national title game in '01.
Mm-hmm.
I never heard them after that. But for me, man, I just fell in love with just being away. And then I remember my official visit there, how amazing it was, for me to come in and, walk do the tunnel walk and have all the fans screaming your name, and then walking on the field, you just seeing they open the gates, you just walk on the field, you just see all this excitement, everybody going. It was a night game that I remember till they played Kansas State. It
Mm-hmm.
was a pretty good environment, and I fell in love with that. And also, some of the guys who I played with in JuCo ended up going there too as well. So that was a convincing thing for me as well. Guys who I built relationships. So we just thought, just go to Nebraska, man. We love it out here in the Midwest. It gives you a chance to focus, lock in, do what you got to do, and make a way for our dreams to come true. And I was able to do that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I went to college in the Midwest too. Those winters are no joke, though.
Nah,
Being
yeah,
being a few Florida boys,
yeah.
I'll tell you.
I
Yeah,
got, I got I got a lot of winter stories, but
yeah.
yeah.
And then, obviously, you were a second round pick by the Bucs. Going through the draft process, did you have a feeling that the Bucs were going to pick you? Kind of, what was your draft process like? And then, when you got that call that it was the Bucs, kind of,
Yeah.
just what was that feeling like?
Man, I had no clue. First of all, I had no
Mhm.
clue the Bucks was going to pick me. Only time I talked to the Bucks was at the combine. Did my little kind of combine interview with those guys, and walked out. Wasn't convinced that I was a guy on their board.
Mhm.
I didn't even know what they needed. But teams who I thought I was going to, teams who I took visits to, was Cleveland, Houston, uh, Tennessee. Um, Teams who I thought kind of like fit my style of play. I didn't know much about the Bucks. I knew about obviously Derrick Brooks and all those guys, and didn't know much of like what they were doing. I know they was coming off they was getting a new head coach in Graciano,
Mhm.
and didn't know much after that. But teams who I had constant contact with was Chicago Bears, Cleveland Browns, Philadelphia Eagles, Tennessee Titans, guys like that. Reaching out to me, checking up on me throughout all the way up into the draft, and the whole process was just me. Coming out of college, I was a little light, so I was just trying to put on weight and stuff like that. And lucky for me, the Bucks did draft me because they didn't care much about having all that weight and stuff like that. I remember one visit I took. I told the coach, how much I weighed, and he was like, man, my safeties weigh more than you. I'm like, dang, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's time I'm like, man, I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with this guy right here. But
Yeah.
you know, luckily, man, I remember on draft day, first of all, leading up to the draft, it was a lot of speculation that I made, slip in the first round, things like that. So I did, have a little small gathering at my place
Mhm.
just to make sure. But I knew for a fact I was going, second day.
Mhm.
And, the gathering obviously got bigger because everybody else knew I was going the second day. But I just remember, man, chilling, sitting down. I seen the Eagles take Michael Kendricks, so I knew they was off the board. Um, Tennessee, I think Tennessee took Zach Brown, so then I knew they was off the board, and then
Mhm.
I had no idea after that. And then I got an 813 phone number,
Mhm.
called, and didn't know the area code or
Yeah.
whatever. And I showed my agent. It's like, that's Tampa. That's Tampa. I'm like, Tampa? Answered the phone. It was Greg Schiano, and handed on the phone over. No, it was Mark Dominic, and they handed the phone to Greg Schiano. And man, tears started flowing.
Mhm.
Everybody got happy. For me, it just felt like it just was a full circle moment for me, man. Just Florida kid, leaving Florida for the first time and going from school for 4 years, been out in the Midwest, not visiting home as much and missing all the big, the birthday
Mm-hmm.
parties, the family gatherings and stuff like that. And for me to just turn around and end up, spending my career in Tampa, I felt like that's what God wanted for me. He wanted me to get away, get my mind right, get focused, grow up, become a man. And then he rewarded me, spending my career in Tampa,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest was history.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Your first few years with the Bucks, or more than a few, obviously were rough, right? There,
Yeah.
you were kind of in the transition period from,
Mhm.
the Bucks were dominant in the early 2000s all the way up to 2007, and
Mhm.
then from '07 to until Brady came in 2020.
Yeah.
You guys didn't make the playoffs. You know, as a Bucks fan, I know how tough it was because that's when I really
Right.
started watching. One of the first few memories I have is Josh Freeman and
Mhm.
and that whole group kind of going from there. But how tough were those first few years? You mentioned Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano wasn't there long, and
Right.
then you go Lovie Smith and Dirk Cutter and just kind of through.
Yeah.
How tough were those first few years?
It was tough. It was tough. Every year was a different learning experience for me. I was growing. I was making plays, and I was becoming a leader. Um, so it was tough just dealing with that. Going through those seasons. Really, my first time really like going through losing seasons since Little League football.
Mm-hmm.
So just trying to understand and trying to put in the extra work to kind of like help us get over the hump. But I'm just one player. You know what I'm saying? I'm a linebacker. I have an effect on the game, but I really don't affect the game that much. You know what I'm saying? But it's a team thing. But at the same time, I was just doing my best to just try to stay encourage myself and encourage guys. And it just was times where all I can do is just go out and just play my best and rap by myself most of the time. But at the same time, I wanted the team to succeed. My rookie year, I remember we got off to a good start. We were 6-4,
Mm-hmm.
hot. I think we was up in the division at the top, and then we just lost like 5, 6 straight out of nowhere. I'm like, dang, like where all the juice went, you know what I'm saying? And then that carried over to next year, with my, bonehead mistake, my first game of my second year against the Jets. And we ended up going losing the first 8 games that year. And, unfortunately, everything transpired with Coach Yano,
Mm-hmm.
who, obviously I have a lot of respect for. And then ended up getting Lovie Smith my third year, and we go 2-14. And that was probably was one of the hardest years ever, just because there was a lot of things going on inside the building and stuff like that. It wasn't really no continuity between we didn't have an offensive coordinator. The offensive
Yeah.
coordinator got sick the last one before the first game of the season. So those guys had to throw everything together, and defensively we wasn't really working with much defensively. And the crazy thing about it is like we had like all those years we had a lot of talent,
Mm-hmm.
and every game we was in, besides that year, besides that Thursday night game, uh, we was in every game. We didn't really get beat as much as the record shows, but that just shows like we had guys who just couldn't really put it all together. Had Lovey for 2 years, I believe. The next year we went 6-10. Started out 6-6 and lost 4 straight with that. And then the next year got Dirk Cutter. We went 9-7, I believe. I
Mm-hmm.
believe we went 9-7.
Yep.
And if the new playoff format was in the day, we would have been that 7 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my first winning season. And then after that, we went 6-10 and 6-10 or 5-11, 5-11, one of those. And those was rough. Those was tough, obviously. And then the new turnover coming on. It was just going to my fourth head coach, and Bruce Arians is coming in, and I'm like, man, maybe it's time for me to make a change. Guys, my guy Gerald was
Yeah.
going through a situation with the team too as well. I'm like, man, this is one of the last guys who I'm really cool with, tight with. Mike's still there. Mike is pretty young. Will Golston still at the time wanting to know
Mm-hmm.
what his true future held. So I'm like, I might well leave too as well. These guys, starting fresh, having a rebuild. And, I remember I reached out to those guys and they was like, nah, we want you to be a foundation piece of what's about to happen. And it was like, trust me, man, you're going to love this guy. You're going to love Bruce Arians. And, obviously I did my own research. and turned out got a lot of positive reviews from BA,
Mm-hmm.
and BA gave me a call, and also transition. My first 8 years of my career, I was in first 7 years of my career, I was in a 4-3 defense,
Yep.
and going to a 3-4, I didn't know how that would work out. So I remember BA and Todd Bowles gave me a call. I talked to those guys. They definitely inspired me, gave me a little juice. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna rock with you guys. I see how you guys view me. The team wanted me back. You guys wanted me back. I see how y'all view me. So I'm gonna stick with it. And 2019, we didn't make the playoffs. We were 7-9 that year. But at the same time, man, it was one of the most fun years I ever had playing football since those years prior. It was, I felt like a professional. Guys was having fun. Guys, like, you could see guys was really competing. You know what I'm saying? Like, and things like that. And most of those games that we did lose, we beat ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously at the end of that year, I felt optimistic about no matter who our quarterback was going to be. I felt
Mm-hmm.
optimistic about it, who we was going to have, because of the way we performed on defense throughout that stretch. I knew it was going to turn over to next year because everybody was coming back. And I remember sitting with B at the exit meeting, and he was like, "Man, I think we may have a chance at the big guy." And I'm like, "Who's the big guy?" I'm like, "Ain't no way." I'm like,
Yeah.
"All right, coach, ain't no way he ain't leaving New England." He was like, "All right, I'm telling you, you got a chance at him. I'll keep in contact with you." And I went home throughout the off season. We wasn't in the radar at first. I didn't see nothing or whatever, and then I just remember it was reporting saying like a sneaky contestant is Tampa Bay Buccaneers and this and that. I'm like, okay, they mentioned us. Maybe got a little hope, but I ain't falling for it.
Yeah.
And then I know where I just seen the ticker, Tom Brady signed. It went under the radar. It was crazy. It wasn't like it was like we were just like a asterisk team kind of, you know what I'm saying? But when it came across the ticker, I remember I was sitting down. I was actually watching, and it came watching Sports Center or whatever, and it came on the ticker, and I saw it, and I kind of like paused, like, this really happening.
Yeah.
And then out of phone, my phone just started blowing up. And the main thing everybody was saying was basically like, I'm so happy for you. I'm like, why y'all happy for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy for you because people will get a chance to see you shine. Gonna see you as a football player and stuff like that. And the rest of history with that, man. And I did get people did kind of realize and stuff like that. But definitely was some fun times in those years.
Yeah. Speaking of, it's ironic you said it because it brings us to our next point, you going kind of under the radar, specifically in those first few years.
Mm-hmm.
It's very rare that someone is first team all pro and doesn't make the Pro Bowl, which happened to you. I mean, you went under the radar for a long time. I mean, through those first kind of few years, you mentioned a few times where you thought you were close. I'll never forget, there was a time, it might have been the 2016 season. I was at the game. You guys were playing the Saints, and I'll never get Tandy got the pick to win the game against the Saints, and I'm like, I was like, we're gonna make the playoffs. Like, we're here now. But was there ever a time where you're like, man, like, we're close to putting this all together before Brady got here? And obviously, we'll talk about that part of your career in a second. But before Brady got here, was there a time where you're like, man, like, yeah, we're under the radar, yeah, we're underappreciated, but it feels like we're close?
Yeah, I would say, even though I would say the 2019 season, for sure, the 2019 season with the new coaching staff. I mean, I always felt we had the talent years prior, but I couldn't really understand what was actually happening. You know what I'm saying? I can't point the blame on nobody. Nothing was going on. But I know for a fact a lot of those games, like, we lost as players. I feel like we lost. It was just a play wasn't being made, a mistake had happened, momentum would shift, and we'll lose. Like, it was just weird stuff going on, But 2019, I just felt for myself personally, and I just saw the confidence of everybody who I play with. You know what I'm saying? Like, defensively, with Bowles, with the coaching staff.
Yep.
I remember at that time, DB coach Mike Ross, he said, like, don't get used to this. Trust me, we ain't gonna the rest of the year on out. We're not gonna miss the playoffs. And that right there, I'm like, I just felt it. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, even though the season that James had, hate to bring this up, or hate to bring my guy up, but you eliminate maybe 10 of those interceptions,
Yep.
maybe 15,
Hmm.
we're a playoff team. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? Like it was no game that we wasn't out of that year. So just situations like that just happen, and then fortunately, unfortunately, they went a different direction, and Tom came in and helped turn the program around. But I would say specifically that year, um, 2019, I knew like the following year, whoever our quarterback was, whatever situation was going to be, we was going to be in the playoffs. We was going to be contenders.
Yeah. One more question before we get to the glory years, as I like to say, with Brady. I might be biased, but I think you're one of the most underrated, underappreciated players really of this last generation. Like I said, you were a 3-time All Pro and only a 1-time Pro Bowler, which I take some of the blame as fans because we should have got you in there more. But did did that for, I know there was times where maybe you were grouped with edge rushers and linebackers when it came to the Pro Bowl, but how frustrating was that to when you're balling, when in your second year, your first team All Pro, and
Yeah.
you're maybe not getting the national notoriety that you should be getting?
Yeah, it was extremely frustrating being a competitor. At the time, all could do was just focus on me and put out my best work. And some guys who did make the Pro Bowl and All Pro and stuff like that. Obviously, I used to kind of like put my stats up to certain guys. Like I could have made the Pro Bowl with what I had, whatever I did, whatever this and that. But like you said, man, my situation was different. Obviously, I was this as a 4-3 outside
Mm-hmm.
linebacker.
Yep.
So a lot of the guys who I was competing with was 3-4 pass rushers, outside linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was unfortunately for me, but at the same time, I still think they could have kind of like looked over there and kind of like
Mm-hmm.
gave me a little showed me a little love, but
Exactly.
that's out of my control. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of arguments I can go with as far as that part. I'm sure they always look at the sacks and stuff like that, but for me, I could talk about it now. Like when I was playing, like I
Mm-hmm.
never used to brag on myself and stuff like that. But now it's like, you gotta look at the forced fumbles that I had. You gotta look
Yep.
at the tackle for losses that I had. And the impact that I made on the game when I was out there playing. Like you have to look at those type of things too as well. Like I was, I was impactful when I was playing. So you know, some of that stuff could have took into account, but that's neither here nor there. All I could do is just you know go on and keep on playing the game the way I know how to play the game. But I definitely feel like I did get jibbed out of a couple All Pros and Pro Bowls,
Mm-hmm.
but it's all good, man. I remember one year specifically, man. I was pissed about this. This when I really like kind of got angry about it. I just remember T.J. Watt or Khalil Mack. Somebody was voted All Pro for edge and linebacker, which
Yeah.
was kind of crazy because they're in the out 4-3 outside. I mean, there was a 3-4 outside linebacker scheme, and I'm like, how is that possible? They did
Mm-hmm.
first team All Pro and Pro as an edge and as a linebacker, so it
Yep.
kind of threw me for a loop for a little bit for a while. And I just remember Thomas Davis. He was a big advocate for it. Like
Mm-hmm.
it ain't fair, and I just remember me and him talking about it. But later on in my career, I switched to a 3-4, and I became a Mike linebacker. But
Yeah.
everything was in the past, but it's all good.
Yeah. Well, I used to tell a lot of my friends would say the same thing. I mean, just turn on the tape, man. The tape doesn't lie
Yeah,
and you see how impactful you were. But you talk about obviously when Tom Brady came, the perception of the franchise changed. From 2007, 2020, yeah, we were close a few years, but could never get over that hump.
yeah,
I remember where I was when Tom Brady signed. I was sitting in my backyard, and I was the
yeah.
same thing with you. I was like, "There's no way. Like this has to be clickbait." Um, when Brady got there, you hear all the time is like, "Oh, the culture changed. Oh, the culture changed." Blah blah blah. What did Brady kind of bring that made the culture change?
It's kind of weird, man, because a guy with his track record and what he brings, you just it just I don't know how it's just a different switch on for you, a different
Mm-hmm.
mentality. I don't know, like I don't know, like it's just weird, man. But himself, man, his presence, the way he is as a person, the way he is as a teammate, just made everybody up their game up a notch. Maybe watch a little extra film, maybe do a little extra reps after practice,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what it brought. That's what helped. That's what he brought to the organization. Even in the office side of things, guys was more, organized on that part. Just understanding like who we have in the building, and the standard that he upholds himself. We have to rise to that occasion. He's the quarterback. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody got to play up to the level of the quarterback, and you don't want to let a guy like him down.
Uh-huh.
And that was what our whole mindset was. And he was a great motivator, man. A competitive guy. Practices was always fun, especially get a pick off of him, or you
Mm-hmm.
disrupt the play on him. You get a chance to throw jabs at him, pick trash talk with him a couple times or whatever, and it was fun to do that. And I think that just brought out the competitiveness of everybody. So everybody just picked up their game. From the offense all the way and trickled over to the defense. Everybody wanted to be their best, and just be really good at what we did. Whatever it was, and game playing against a certain team, and whether it's being on time for meetings, everything was
Mm-hmm.
just, amped up. Everybody was just ready to get out there and play football and, win games. It was like, okay, we have our guy now. Now we just gotta, things last year didn't work well. Now we gotta ante it up a little bit, and we'll get where we want to be.
Yeah. Of course, when Tom Brady came, it just so happened to be COVID too. So
Yeah,
us Bucs fans, obviously, I'll never forget the first game against New Orleans. There was no fans there,
right,
and
right.
just kind of way the season went. And then obviously, whenever Brady comes, the expectations were sky high, and then we're 7-5 at the bye,
Yeah.
and then things kind of flip from there. Do you remember a moment or something after that bye week where you're like, wow, we're rolling now. We could really win the whole thing.
Speaking of the COVID thing, I think that helped out too. Like, Coach BA made, strict rules. The building
Mm-hmm.
they did, it was very strict in certain things. And it just showed the discipline of us, the discipline of the guys. You know what I'm saying? I think us being around each other a lot more because we're the only ones in it. We going through this whole situation. Us being around a lot more kind of got us, on the right track. But I remember specifically that year we were 7-5 going to the bye week. We just lost to
Kansas City.
Kansas City. I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna say it was Kansas City or the Rams. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Kansas City. We lost three straight.
Mm-hmm. Rams, Kansas City, all in that kind of stretch. Because I
Yeah,
remember it was Rams on Monday night, and then it was a CBS game against the Chiefs right
right,
before the bye.
right. We lost three out of the four. I want to say
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
we lost three out of the four, and because we got blew out by the Saints too. I forgot
Mm-hmm.
Sunday night we got blew out by the Saints. Yeah, we lost three out of the four, and I just remember in the hallway before we broke and everybody went on their little bye week or whatever. Uh, I saw Tom. Me and saw Tom saw each other, and he stopped me. He was like, just me and him, nobody else around. We talking, like, how's it going on defense? I'm like, oh, just some things we gotta iron out, bro. Like, we'll get it fixed though, man. And we just gotta hone in on certain things, details, small things, whatever. I'm like, what about you? How's it going on offense? He's like, yeah, about the same thing, man. But you just gotta be better in certain areas. I have to be, put it on himself as accountability, stuff like that. And then he had a quick pause and he just looked at me dead in the eye. He was like, but I promise you this, we'll never lose another game. Like, he didn't say it like that, but he said, we'll never lose another fucking game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we ain't gonna never lose another game. And
Mm-hmm.
truth be told, man, truth be told, we ain't lose another game. We
Mm-hmm.
won whatever that stretch was, went out and won the Super Bowl, man.
Mm-hmm.
That right there, when I obviously I already had a lot of respect for him, but that right there put him at the top of the top once he said that, and it all came true.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And then during the playoff run, of course, didn't get any easier. Everything was on the road for you guys, and
right.
I'll never forget that Packer game. They're slamming those things against the
Yeah.
freaking against the bleachers in Green Bay. But
Mhm.
I remember some of those moments, like what some of your favorite memories. Like I'll never
Yeah.
forget the Devin White pick against the Saints.
Oh
That
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
yeah.
awesome because the
Right.
Saints kicked our ass every year up until that point.
Hmm.
It felt like. And then when Devin White got that pick, it's like, oh my gosh, we might finally beat them,
Yeah,
or I'll
legit.
never forget Tom Brady to Scotty Miller to end the half
Right.
against Green Bay.
I can see that.
Are there certain plays that stick out to you during that run before the Super Bowl that once you guys finally got to come home and play the Chiefs?
Yeah, for me, man, I could go game by game. Shoot, Washington, I feel
Mhm.
like, Washington was kind of like, we was in a dogfight with Washington.
Oh yeah, Taylor
I
Heineke.
remember my sack kind of sealed the game. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a moment for me. It was a big moment, being in my first career playoff
First
game
playoff
and
game.
making a
Yep.
big play like that. That was real big. And then going against the Saints, that Devin White interception, because we was rolling. I want to say right prior, we forced a fumble with
Mm-hmm.
Tweeds
Yep. Yep.
and then come back in the next drive and get an interception. It's like, okay, yeah, this is happening. Like we cranking up at the right time. And for me against the Packers, man, I just felt like when we was beating them 21-10 in the first
Yep.
half.
Yep.
In the second half, I remember Tom threw those 3 interceptions. And defensively, we got us the ball back every time.
Mm-hmm.
Like that right there kind of like showed like the confidence that we had defensively that we could get it done. I think those moments right there, like facing those adversities, that NFC Championship game, you turn the ball over defense, go out there, get the ball right back. Same thing all three
Mm-hmm.
times. And I just felt like that right there kind of like showed like we was ready. We was destined to, make it to the big game.
Yeah, and going into the playoffs, obviously it was your first playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
Even though there was no fans in Washington, was it a different intensity? Was it kind of what you thought a playoff game would be like, kind of going into that?
I mean, as far as like the atmosphere, it kind of like the season kind of prepared me
Yeah,
for it. I knew it wasn't going to be no fans, so when we played in the stadiums already with no fans, we played in Chicago, we played
yeah.
in Denver, we played in New Orleans, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Those certain places didn't have no fans, and then when we got there, the only thing that kind of like routed us a little bit was like the night before the game. Alex Smith said he wasn't playing, and they had got Taylor Heineke,
Mm-hmm.
so we didn't have no game plan,
Oof.
no understanding of what type of quarterback he was, what he do. Like I didn't have no film on him. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So didn't know he was a scrambler, didn't know he was going to do this and that and stuff like that. And he came out and gave us a hard
yeah.
time.
He's going
But
crazy.
yeah, but we was able to
Mm-hmm.
prevail
Mm-hmm.
and come out on top or whatever. But that's probably like the only point where it's like where maybe we kind of got rattled a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. But other than that, man, we went into New Orleans with a lot of confidence. We went into Green Bay with a lot of confidence, and I think we went into the Super Bowl with the most confidence I've ever had
Mm-hmm.
in preparation for a football game.
Yeah. Were you guys like kind of biting at the bit to be able to play the Saints again in the playoffs? Obviously, and how the two regular season games go. Because as a fan, I didn't want to play the Saints. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was like, hopefully with some breaks. But were you wanting to get back in there and kind of get back against them?
I mean, I think the way it was already set up, I just knew we was going to end up going against them at some
Mm-hmm.
point. So we definitely was ready for it. We was ready for whatever they're gonna throw at us, and the game plan. We switched up our whole game plan. From what we did the first couple of games to that game, it was basically like that whole game was basically like man on man.
Yeah.
We're gonna play man on man and let the guys get to the quarterback. Obviously, Drew was, kind of like on the downside of his, career
Mm-hmm.
as far as like throwing the football deep. So we used that to our advantage. We
Mm-hmm.
made him, try to force the ball downfield. I want to say we had what 2, 3 interceptions that game,
Mm-hmm.
maybe three. Yeah, 3 interceptions
Yeah.
that game.
Yeah.
So we were just, just trying to get in their faces and make them throw the ball over the top to give guys, a little room to get over and make plays on the football, and it worked. I mean, the game did get off to a rough start though with the
Oh
punt
yeah.
return that hurt
Mm-hmm.
out in our favor at some points, and right before Tweeds forced the fumble, they was driving. They was driving to actually put the game away.
Yep. Yep.
I want to say it was 20-13 at that point,
Mm-hmm. It was.
and we ended up tying it up. And then Devin got the pick and went down and scored. It was 27-20, we up, and then the following drive right after that, uh, when we was in 2 man, make him throw over the top. I was on
Mm-hmm.
Jared Cook, and he threw it over the top, and Mike Edwards got it,
Mike
kind of like
Edwards.
sealed the deal, and we went up
Mm-hmm.
30-20. So, I think that's the only really adversity we probably had was just against Washington. Every other game, like we was ready for what they was gonna throw at us.
Yeah. Obviously, going to the Super Bowl, of course, Rick Stroud is someone I listen to a lot. He says, in the most Tampa Bay way, of course, it's a Super Bowl, but it's like quarantine Super Bowl, right? And,
Yeah, right,
so it wasn't maybe the exact
right.
experience, but
Yeah.
getting to play the Super Bowl at home, and Brady came out and said, I knew exactly what the Chiefs were going to do. I had all
Yeah.
the answers to the test. Was it similar with you guys on defense? Because right when Kansas City announced they had their tackles out, I was like, oh, that's wraps. Like I
Yeah.
thought that we'd have a really good chance. And then I thought you might have had one of the more underrated performances. I'm not just saying that because you're on here, because what you did on Kelsey for a majority of the game really kind of took him out of the game.
Yeah.
Were you guys just ultra confident going into that game with your game plan? And what was it like playing in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it was ultra confidence just because, despite what Tom said on his side of the ball, but I know defensively, I remember when we played in the first game, we was a little arrogant. We was ready to go against them like, man, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelsey, Mahomes, whatever, they can't do nothing with us. We played a lot of man, single high man to man, leaving Carlton on Tyreek by himself a lot. And they kind of took advantage of us and all that on that aspect. Like, don't get me wrong. Carlton's a great football player. That's my little
Mm-hmm.
brother. But at some point, you gotta respect your opponent. You know what I'm saying? And this guy's basically built to beat those type of coverages and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I remember we was down maybe 24-3 at halftime, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember at halftime we switched up everything, made all type of adjustments. We're gonna show too high. We're gonna do this, that, and that. And we killed them in the second half. And we actually had a chance to come back. We lost 27-24. And, I remember Coach Bowles said, I hope we play them again.
Mm-hmm.
I know them. I got them. I got to know them by like a book now. And, that moment happened. And we ended up playing them in the Super Bowl. I remember, the because it's 2 weeks. It's a bye week and then the Super Bowl week. I remember when we met for the during the bye week, he came up, threw out the game plan, gave everybody their packets, and he just gave it to us, whatever, and this and that. And then the next week, when you really get into the meat and potatoes of things, he basically went up in the board, we're in meetings. He was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Started with D-line first. D-line, we're going to get after their ass. We're going to get after their ass up front. We're going to get after their quarterback, and you guys got to stop the run. I'm putting the run game on y'all because, their type of team they is, they not going to, stay true to their run game, so we're going to leave it up on y'all. Fonte, you on 87. You got him wherever he go. If it's man to man or if it's zone coverage, you're gonna line up on him just to make everything look the same. And Carlton, you're gonna do this. Safeties, we're gonna do this and that, and we're gonna show different looks and stuff like that. But basically, we gonna whenever they're in certain formations, we're gonna switch the formation. We're gonna switch the coverages and things like that. And once we got to the game, we started watching film, and they did everything we expected them to do.
Mm-hmm.
So when there was in certain formations, we knew this was gonna happen. So we switched coverages. When certain guys lined up certain ways, we knew that was gonna do this. So we was able to get a beat on. We was jumping routes and stuff like that. And we kind of took the game plan and stuck with it. And nothing changed throughout that whole game. And the D line, those dudes was eating. They they like, to be honest with you, they was really like just drawing stuff up on the sideline. Okay, like, we did this right here. Now we finna do this,
Mm-hmm.
and it all worked, man. Those guys were getting at them, and everybody on the back end kind of like held their own, and everybody was tackling well. Everybody was doing what they're supposed to do. Everybody was flying around, man. And it turned out to be a fun football game. One of the top 5 dominating moments in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Obviously, that feeling of winning the Super Bowl for you, and getting drafted in 2012 and going through all the hardship and going through all the losing, getting close to the playoffs, not making it. There's a few guys, you and Mike, kind of went through the same thing. I wish Gerald McCoy could have been on that team, right? I mean, he was just a year too early. But when it finally ended, like, what was that feeling like? Of you guys, like you said, you were 2-14 at one point, the laughing stock of the league, and now you're a Super Bowl champion. What was that like?
It was an incredible feeling, bro. It was just like a weight just lifted off my shoulders, and like a feeling of joy for everybody who I played with throughout those tough years. Guys who didn't have much success when they left the program. I just felt like I did this for those guys. Guys who I built bonds with, guys who I built relationships with, man. Like, understanding what we went through those times, man. I just wishing guys could experience this same feeling that I was feeling. Guys who kind of like set the foundation in a sense, you know what I'm saying, went through those hard times, in particular, Gerald McCoy, me and Gerald everybody know me how me and tight
Mm-hmm.
Gerald is, and still the admiration that he has for the Bucs still to this day.
Yep. Yep.
I just wish that he could have got that chance to feel what it feel like. But crazy thing is, throughout that whole year, throughout that whole playoff journey, he was FaceTiming me after every game, so I got a chance to basically celebrate with him in the locker room, how the vibes is and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So he kind of lived through me in that moment. But I took everything all in, bro. I was the last person off the field. I
Yeah.
didn't even know it, but that's just how people was just grabbing me left and right. People want to do interviews and stuff like that, and they got clips out there, guys, just saying how happy they is for me. You know what I'm saying? And, at the moment, it wasn't really, wasn't really, what's the word I'm looking for? Wasn't really recollecting with me
Yeah.
at the moment, but when it was all said and done, I realized dang, man, I did go through a lot of hard time,
Mm-hmm.
here, and I'm really reaping what I sowed. You know what I'm saying? Putting all that hard work I put in, trying to be consistent, trying to be the best I can be, trying to be the best leader I can be. It all paid off in this moment right here, and nobody can never take that away from me. I'm always have a Super Bowl champion
Mm-hmm.
next to my name, no matter what happened the prior 8 years of my career.
Mm-hmm. I thought, and you can correct me if you disagree. I thought the 2021 team was better than the 2020 team, and that's what I thought. I mean, 2021 from the jump, we were rolling. I
Yeah,
mean, 13-4,
yeah.
hitting on all cylinders.
Mm-hmm.
Was that season? Was that some of the most dominant football y'all ever played? And I mean, do you agree? I know 2021 didn't win, and we'll get to that in a second. But
Yeah.
every game that 2021 team played, I was like, oh, I mean, it just looked different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with you. Everybody says that. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
says that team was the best team it has for just bringing everybody back that offseason
Mm-hmm.
and having everybody, understand having a fresh offseason going all the way through. So everybody was ready. Everybody knew what the expectations were. And I do agree. I do agree that may have been the best football team I've been a part of that didn't win the Super Bowl. But the thing about that year, man, it right at the terrible time, we had a bunch of injuries,
Mm-hmm.
of key guys, losing Mike and Chris in the same game, losing me in that same game,
Yep.
against the Saints.
The Saints, the freaking
Gosh,
Saints, man.
So it kind of hit a rough spot, and then trying to get guys to add in, and then obviously the AB situation
Yep.
happened. So
Yep.
all in a bad moment, things, kind of went left. But at the same time, we still could have, took it all away because I honestly feel like we probably was the most feared team. I remember playing the Rams, and we was down 27-3-2 in that
Mm-hmm.
game, and we come back and tie the game up 27-27. And for them to beat us in that play right there, it was just
Mm-hmm.
it's not meant for us. You know what I'm saying? And I wholeheartedly feel like we would have won that game. We would
Oh
have been
yeah.
back-to-back Super Bowl
Oh
champions
yeah. No doubt.
because the 49ers was solid, but they wasn't ready.
Nope.
They wasn't what they were the
Yeah.
year. And going against the Bengals, that probably would have been nasty too. But but everything happens for a reason, man. And
Mm-hmm.
now those guys trying to get back to that level. Been to the playoffs the past 4 or 5 years or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Last year was the first year in a
Mm-hmm.
while, and I think those guys this year gonna get back to it.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And you touched on that Rams loss. As a Bucs fan, that Rams loss is the toughest loss I've ever had as a Bucs fan. Do you agree with that, or is there a loss that kind of sticks out before? Because, like you said, no offense to the 49ers or the
Yeah.
Bengals, but it was wraps if we won that game.
Right. In that fashion, the way we lost, yeah, that extremely tough, especially coming back down, facing all that
Mm-hmm.
adversity, and coming all the way back just to lose like that. Just to lose regardless. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? We did all this work for nothing. And the crazy thing about it, that was my birthday. That was on my birthday. So that was tough to deal with. But nah, man, the toughest game I've been a part of was against the Falcons, 2014.
Mm.
That's gonna forever be in my memory. I know everything that happened that day. That was a tough game to be a part of for me. Just being a competitor, you know what I'm saying? And then to go out like that, I never want nothing like that on my resume. Whether it's little league, high school,
Mm-hmm.
wherever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we went out that game, it was embarrassing outing for me.
Yeah.
But the way that divisional round game happened, that might be tops. Just because what transpired all the way up to that.
Yeah, no doubt. And then, obviously Brady kind of transitions out, and then Baker comes in. And I'll never forget when Baker was coming in. A bunch of people were picking us last in the division, not projecting anything. And then obviously, we're not going to spend too much time on the season. We'll get out of here soon, but we make the playoffs. We win a playoff game, and have the ball going to tie the game to go to the NFC Championship. What was that year like with Baker? And how are you guys able to carry over that momentum of the Tom Brady era?
That year showed a lot of resiliency from a lot of guys. Like just the never quit, never give up mentality. Like there's always a chance. Just the grit, the grind. Like that showed a lot of like those years kind of like showed a lot of character of the guys that we brought into the locker room. Besides last year, but the years before that, like it just showed like guys are willing to work, like guys are they want to win, they fighting, they gonna keep fighting. Obviously starting with Baker, with his, his the way he is as a quarterback, the way he is as a person, the way he is as a football player. You love that. You love to see him, get guys going, get guys fired up. Putting his body on the line. You don't see that stuff out of most quarterbacks. And the relationship he built with certain guys, is just incredible to see, man. Everybody loved Bake, man. He's I'm sure he learned from what he'd been through prior to his years or whatever. Before we got him outside looking in, I thought, what he's a little prima donna, pretty boy, spoiled guy, and this and that. Being a first overall pick, he got everything handed to him. But the way he works, man, it don't seem like it. You know what I'm saying? That's why I respect Baker so much, man. That's my guy. He working for everything he gets, and he treat everybody the same in the locker room, and he grind just like everybody else, and he wants to be great, and that's what I love about him. And last year was a real rough year for him. I'm sure everybody know about all the injuries and stuff. You watched the quarterback show, you saw he had a tough time, and obviously there's no real excuses for that, but it is what it is, So I think after going out there and seeing those guys, I think he's primed for a great year.
Yeah, no, I agree. We actually had the producer of the quarterback show who worked with Baker on, and she was talking about just all the stuff that he was going through with that. But so Jason Light, one question after this one, but Jason Light, the big thing that came out last year is that I am that man, and what they're looking for when they're drafted. And Jason Light, one of the things I admire most about him is in the later rounds he finds guys that contributes. You got it just on last year's defense, Tyke Smith, who's a stud. Right. You go back, Luke Gedeke, you got Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, and Antoine Field Jr. Not a single guy named was a first round pick. You know what I mean? Right. And that just kind of speaks to the drafting ability of him. And then for those who don't know, that I am that man is a silhouette in the Bucs draft room, and the silhouette is of Lavonte David. It's like basically if we can draft Lavonte David with every pick, we'll be in good shape. When that came out, kind of what did that mean to you after putting just so much work into this franchise?
Yeah, it was great to hear, man. I remember I was signing back 2023, and I didn't know. I had no idea of none of this stuff. We were sitting at the podium, and he mentioned it, like he brought it up. Like, we have a silhouette of a guy, and that guy's Lavonte David. This is the guy who we want in our locker room. This is the type of guys we want to lead our locker rooms in. I'm like, what? Like, dang, that's crazy. Like, how long this been going on? You know what I'm saying? Like, stuff like that. And it kind of, made me, feel even more, feel like, yeah, man, this was always the place for me. This is the place where I always should have been. God led me to this place for a reason, and stuff like that kind of like helped me realize that, just the relationships I build with those guys, Jason with the Glaziers, everybody in the front office, those guys, and then obviously having a great camaraderie with the coaching staff and things like that, and how they treat people, and how they want their football team to look. And me, I would say, last year we kind of got away from a lot of things that we normally do as a football team, and I think that's a lot of stuff that transpired to us, going through that bad little stretch after starting off 6-2, which is crazy. But I think I feel like they got back on the right track as far as like a lot of people don't like, the free agencies, everybody wanted the big splash free agents, but
Mm-hmm.
they got exactly what we needed, as
Mm-hmm.
far as like, getting Ashawn, getting Akadim Muhammad,
Mm-hmm.
in the draft, getting
Yeah.
Ted Hurst, getting Ruben Bain,
Mm-hmm.
getting Keontae Scott, just
Yep.
certain areas where we know that we can add depth at, and guys you can add depth, and these guys could potentially be starters too as well. So I think they did a great job from that aspect. And being out there watching them doing training camp practice, man, it's very, very fun to see. Like I said, it was good for me to see. It was exciting, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wasn't gonna get back out there. They
There you
they
go.
they in good hands with what they got. With Josiah, with Trotter, and
Mm-hmm.
Anzalone,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously Sabasier Dennis, those
Mm-hmm.
guys, and Yaya and Kalijah coming back healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Certain thing, all business stuff with Vita and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think that's gonna work itself out.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once those guys, get on the football field, I think it's gonna turn out well.
Yeah, and just a few rapid fire questions for you to end this here. You already mentioned Gerald McCoy. Is there any other teammates that stood out to you when we were with the Bucs? So you're like, yeah, man,
Yeah,
that's kind of like my guy for life.
yeah. Corn Alexander is the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Devin White.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate stuff that has transpired with him.
Mm-hmm.
A bunch of guys, man. Mason Foster, my guy. EJ Biggers, I go all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Michael
Yeah.
Bennett. We had guys, man. You had
Yep.
guys.
Yep.
Mike Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what happened this past year, Mike, that's my brother right there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who else I could throw out there? Kevin Minner played with
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Minner. Me and Mint got a great relationship. Will Ghosted, this is my guy.
Oh yeah.
Will Ghosted was my bodyguard on the field for all my
Yeah.
years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna always have his back no matter what. Glad that we got Nacho back.
Mm-hmm.
Sue, obviously.
Yeah.
Man, I know some guys that I'm missing, man.
Nah, that's all right. Think about it.
Ataran Werner, he was
Mm-hmm.
one of my guys. He
That's
just
a
texted me the
throwback.
other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shoot. Carlton, obviously.
Yeah.
A bunch of guys, man.
Yeah.
All those guys.
It's unfair for me to ask you to pick a team. Man. There's too many of them. But who's the hardest player that you had to tackle throughout your career?
The hardest player I had to tackle throughout my career.
Or maybe not the hardest, but one that's like, man, like that guy's tough to bring down,
Yeah, I would say Marshawn and early on Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
And those guys was, tough, heavy guys,
Mm-hmm.
to bring down. Alvin Kamara, he
Mm-hmm.
has incredible balance.
Oh yeah,
He was
he's a dog.
who's was always tough to bring down. Like when you hit him, you got to wrap him up, get
Mm-hmm.
him down. And what thing that frustrates you the most about him is like when you hit him and you feel like you got a good hit on him, he pop right back up. So
Mm-hmm.
you gotta respect him for that. And Bijan Robinson is a guy
Mm-hmm.
who dangerous, man.
Yeah,
Dangerous.
we talk about it a lot.
By far one of the most feared players right now in the game.
Yeah, no, he's a dog.
Yeah.
Is there any place that you love playing outside of Raymond James, but any like away stadium that you always love playing in?
Any stadium with grass.
Yeah, yeah.
Any stadium with a grass field for sure. But the place that I love playing just because like I felt like the energy, the atmosphere was Lambeau Field. I felt the history of it. Like even though like I don't know much actually about the field, but like when I walked in there, like you could feel something. You could just feel. You could feel the difference. Like, oh yeah, this is football right here.
Yeah,
one of those things.
Yeah. And then last question here. There was during a lot of your time there, I feel like a lot of people in Tampa got to Tampa and then got out of Tampa. You know what I mean? Especially during that part. And part of the reason why you're so beloved is you stayed and you were there for the hard times and then there in the glory years. How important was it for you to retire as a Buck? Because I remember toward the end, you were saying like, "Oh, I'm only signing with the Bucs," and I remember people saying like, "Oh, that might not be a good negotiation tactic or whatever." But at that point, it didn't matter. You were like a Buck for life.
Yeah.
Why was that so important to you?
Yeah, just because, man, like I built the foundation there. I made history there. And they wanted me. It wasn't like it wasn't one of those things where I'm reaching out to them like, hey man, like I want to come back, this and that. Nah, they were reaching out to me like, after the times at the end of the season, like, I know you're a free agent, but we want you back. We
Yeah.
want you back. We're gonna get whatever we do. We're gonna want to get you back. And during those times where I was negotiating or whatever, when I was a free agency, and it was only one time I really flirted with free agency for real. Just to just to see like it was coming down to the end of my career. Just wanted to really like see what was out there. I really wanted to come back to the Dolphins. I really wanted to play for the Dolphins. I wanted to come back home just because like being back home. I know just no different being back home, playing in front of fans back at home, and then that didn't happen. But it wasn't gonna be a big chance that it happened. But I just wanted to see, But the Bucs made it clear that they wanted me back whenever it was like whenever I wanted to make a decision, they gave me my time. It was like, whenever you ready, got this contract ready for you. Just let us know. And that right there kind of made me feel like, like, yeah, man, this is the organization that was made for me, and I owe my loyalty to those guys.
You think they'll be back in the playoffs this year?
Oh, for sure. I think so, for sure. They got like let them keep staying on the radar. We fly really well under the radar. You know what I'm saying? Like we got great pieces around, man. Like I know the injury stuff is an excuse, man, but we lost some big people, like some huge pieces last year. You know what I'm saying? And guys trying to play through things, and kind of like it was bad. But I think getting the whole offensive line back, the whole starting five back, that whole rotation all last year was crazy. A healthy Baker, a healthy Bucky, a healthy Kalijah.
That's the biggest piece to me. People don't realize how big of a piece that was when he went down last year.
Exactly. A more, a more stable secondary. Those guys gonna get it done.
Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Well, Lavonte, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. You're a legend. And I just appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem, man. Appreciate you, bro.
If you guys did make it to the end, please make sure to like, subscribe, download if you're listening on podcast, and we'll be back later this week with another episode.